Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, April the 3rd, and it is a gray, overcast, early spring kind of day here. Fortunately, not chilly enough that it is snowing, but the room was a little chilly when I came in here this morning. Ran the heater for a little bit just to warm it up a smidge more. Again, it's surprising how much of a difference it makes when there is sun out and when the sun is not out as to what the temperature in this room is. But we're out here again because, it's not winter, so we're taking advantage of all of the at least decent weather to be out here. This is a channel about cross stitch and the stitching that I've done this week. If you are a new viewer, thanks for stopping by and spending some time with me. And as always, very, very grateful for those of you that are returning viewers and have come back to see what's going on. Thanks for all the comments and questions last week. There were a number of them. And we'll be dealing with some of them at various points when we're talking about the specific pieces. So I'm just having a quick little look at the notes. Okay, Tanya, the Starlit Stitcher, loved her comment where she's like, she had a good chuckle when I said the land of weirdness last week, which I liked the comment because then I had to go back and watch the video again for myself to see where I said it. I didn't doubt that I'd said it. It totally sounded like something I would say, but it was kind of funny to watch someone else kind of comment on it and went, oh yeah, no. Went back and looked it up and said, oh yeah, totally the land of weirdness. Got a couple of comments on Markup RXP, and someone did comment and correct me that Markup RXP was available for both iOS, otherwise known as Apple devices, as well as Android devices. So it is, I of course went back and confirmed, while I was uploading the video, so it was a timely check on my part. But they are correct. So that one is available for both versions of Life. I do have to say I've attempted to pull a few more things into Pattern Keeper this week, and of the 3 that I've tried to put into Pattern Keeper, only 1 has come in and is not searchable. I can mark it off, but I can't search on it. Suzanne had commented that she much prefers Pattern Keeper. So Suzanne, please comment again, because I would love to know why you like it so much better. Now, I totally get that it may be much better. Like, I've seen some people working with it where they are using PDF charts that are specifically Pattern Keeper compatible. So Pattern Keeper has a list of designers that they say we are compatible with their charts. And there are things like Heaven and Earth Designs and Artisy and Long Dog Samplers and, et cetera, et cetera. So it is, and you can do some interesting things, and how those show up in Pattern Keeper are quite different. For me, what I'm finding the challenge is that the patterns that I'm wanting to put in there are not from supported designers. They are charts that I am having to scan because they're older paper charts. They're not coming from Etsy designers where I'm getting them as a PDF. They're not coming from the supported designers. And so far, they're not loading well into Pattern Keeper. So Suzanne, and anybody else out there, if you are a Pattern Keeper fan, please leave me a comment, because I would love to know why you prefer Pattern Keeper. And again, it could just be because of the patterns that I'm trying to import into the app. And if you think it's user error, which is totally a possibility too. So if you have tips or tricks that you think will help me, also please throw those into the comments down below, because I'd love to hear those as well. Bridget added a comment that she has also been to the Craft Connection and has enjoyed her visits there, so that was good to hear. She also had a tip for me for my Biscornu that I was working on, that I was complaining that it didn't fit nicely into my Q-snap, and she said sewing on fabric, which is totally an option. But if I fix the problem, how would I complain? Anyway, it's for me on that particular piece, it's not a big enough problem that I felt that I had to do something, because I can throw it into a hoop. But anyway, again, it's just a little note to self next time. Anywho, but thank you for the tip. And if it was something that I was working on for a longer period of time, I would probably do that to fix the problem. There were a number of questions that came in from the lovely Denise, who had lovely things to say about me, so thank you so much for your kind words. One of the funny comments she made was that the method that I'm attempting to use to save myself money and limit my stash acquisitions, particularly from a chart perspective, which is, do I like this chart more than I like other charts that I currently have in my stash, is working very, very well for her. According to her, I've saved her a whole lot of money, which is great. Except if you look at my haul last week, it apparently is not working so well for me. Although I do acknowledge there is a difference to how I view things when I'm not in my local needlework shops. If I've traveled and I'm in somewhere where I don't go normally and is not readily available to me, and they've got something I like, that tends to tip the scale, where I go, okay, it's here and available and I'm getting it anyway because it's staring me right in the face. Anyway, but I really like that my line is saving her a lot of money. So she had some very specific questions which were really interesting. Some of them made me think. So she wanted to know whether I view Jerusalem or the Nativity as my magnum opus piece of cross stitching. And the funny answer is neither of them. I do have a project that is a whip, which I call my 60. That's right, 60, my 60-year project, which you have not seen me stitch on the entire time I've had a Flosstube channel. So yes, it's been, it hasn't been worked on in a number of years for a variety of reasons. I still like it. I still want to work on it. It is in the plan for this year, so you are going to be seeing it later. So we'll bring that up again when it comes up. But my 60-year project, if it ever gets finished, which, hey, who knows if that's ever going to get finished, given it's had a little bit of a timeout there, which was more than a couple of years. Anyway, we'll see how that one goes. But if that ever gets finished, that would be my magnum opus piece. So stay tuned. From my 5-year plan, what am I most excited about and why? So I don't know that I have a most excited. What I do when I'm looking at my 5-year plan and what the 5-year plan, for me, what the benefit is to my 5-year plan is, 1, it's a plan. 2, it is always subject to revision and adjustment and change and, whatever. But after having gone for a very long period of time, for a variety of reasons where I had very little stitching going on, there were certainly periods of time there over the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years where I'm not sure there was a lot of actual stitching, but there was good stash acquisitioning. And again, all for various reasons. What the 5-year plan is spurring me to do is to make sure that I'm at least getting started on those projects and making progress on them. So again, my 60-year project, the benefit of the plan is it is now concretely in the plan. Whereas, even if you look at since I started my Flosstube channel, you haven't seen it at all. And it's not that I haven't been aware of it or that I haven't wanted to work on it, but I had some very specific goals like if you look at 2021, I had very specific goals that I wanted to focus on one piece every month, and that I had in my stash for a period of time, like in some cases 20 years, and had never started and still liked it and wanted to get it going. And all of that got accomplished, and that was great. Not all of them got finished, which was not, again, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get them started and make progress, and that was great. This year I've got some different goals about what I'm starting and I am working, and again, the plan for this year got adjusted because it incorporated a cell, and I've changed a few things, and I've worked a few other things into the plan, and all of those are great. And so really for me, it's not so much that I have a most favorite project or, oh my goodness, when I finally get to start that one. It's that I've got a plan where I get to say, I've got a plan to get these things started. And once I get them started, you know, I talked about this before where I said one of the, I don't enjoy starting a new project. I don't mind kitting it up. I can kit projects up till the cows come home and love every minute of that. And I'm totally fine picking up a project that's already been worked on and keeping going. It's that first bit, starting a new project, getting it going, and it's really getting about the first couple of 100 stitches into it, and then I'm fine. But there are certainly periods of time where it's like, I have to start this, and you know, that starting is usually my problem, which I know is not the case for a lot of people. Starting is my problem. I don't like the first bit of starting. I'm totally fine when it's a whip, but I don't like starting it. So again, part of the benefit of the plan is it's a concrete sort of saying, just get it started, because then it'll be sitting in your basket of whips, and you can pull it out and you can work on it, and it'll be ready to go, and you'll like, that's no problem for me. And you'll see that in what I worked on this week. It's the starting. So now I have a concrete plan. It's a multi-year. I get to put things in and move them around. But even then, like, I get to look at my 5-year plan and go, oh, look at the projects that are coming up. Those are going to be so exciting to get them started. Again, it's not so much about getting them finished, although I have some things built into the plan specifically about getting projects completed and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it for me is just get them started. Get them started, have the plan so that you're actually working on them. Again, very specific goals for 2021, which were accomplished, and that was great. 2022, there are different goals for this year, which includes things like, you know, the Magnum Opus 60-year project is finally going to be coming out and getting some attention after a very long hiatus for a variety of reasons. I still like the project, still want to work on it, would love to see it finished and hanging up in my house because I know exactly where it's supposed to be going, but it's going to take a really long time, and I'm okay with that. And if I never get it finished, that's technically okay too. That's not necessarily my end goal. You hear people talk about whether they're a product stitcher or a process stitcher. I am a process stitcher. It's not that I'm against getting things finished, but that's not my overarching goal. It's to actually do the stitching. It's the action. Work on it, do some stitching, make some progress. That for me is the win. It's nice that things get finished, and I like that. We all know I am terrible about turning things into fully finished objects, and part of my goal for this year is to be a little better about working on that. But again, I love the fact that I have a concrete plan. It was fun putting the 5-year. It was fun when I first started, came up with like the 2021 plan and planned out the whole year. Went, oh my goodness, this is so great. Because then I got really excited about my stitching. Because I got to see, sort of saying, like, you're going to start these things and you've got them ready to go. So that's, for me, that's the benefit of the plan. That's the best thing about the plan, is that I get to look at these things and go, oh my goodness, you're going to work on these. And that's the best part. So it's not that there's a favorite project. I like all of them. That's why they're in the plan. That's why they're in my stash. But now I have a concrete plan as to starting them and making progress. She also asked, is there anything about a project where I kind of concretely say I avoid projects like fill in the blank. And, you know, she gave some examples of like, you know, she avoids projects because she won't do 1/1 stitching because she works on Ada. She won't work on kits because she's heard way too many people complain about the charts are too hard to read, they run out of the fibers, there's, you know, not enough stuff in the kit. So she avoids them, period, just straight up. The only thing that currently I would say gives me pause about a project is size. You know, if there's a pattern out there and I'm drawn to it, it means I'm drawn to it. And we all know I'm totally fine with changing all sorts of things. So if there are certain elements of things, you know, not necessarily that I dislike, but I would have preferred if they looked a little different, I'm more than happy to spend the time sort of, you know, and it does take me time to change it and adjust it and move things around and replace something, you know, the same way I do with colors. You know, it's very nice that, you know, the designer picked out this lovely earth tone palette, which means I just look and go, she had the most brilliant idea ever. I just need to color correct. I was having a chat with Jeanette this week. It was pretty funny. She made a comment that she's a little surprised that I don't like vintage flowers too. And it's not that I don't like it, but I'm not as drawn to it. And she just looked at me and she said, it's because you have not properly unyellowed it. Which I thought was hilarious. Yeah, she knows I have a yellow problem, and I thought it was just great. She's like, you have not properly unyellowed this. Have you really looked at it? You should really look at this closely, because when you properly unyellow it, I think you're really gonna love this project. And I have taken that advice. I've looked at it, but I have said to her, I'm probably not gonna work on Vintage Flowers 2 until I get Vintage Flowers 1 done. Anyway, I thought it was great. You haven't properly unyellowed it. Anyway, and she highlighted some things, and I kind of looked and went, ooh, yeah, if I change that, and it's like, so it's percolating behind the scenes, but I loved her commentary. So really right now, size is the only thing. I can't remember. I was looking at some design where it's like I was really drawn to it. I loved the color palette. I loved the style of it. I loved everything about it. And then I looked at the stitch count and went, it was like about 700-esque by, and my answer is, who cares what the other number is? Like 7. I was like, okay, no. I already have my 60-year project. I already have a number of other larger projects in the stash, and I just looked at it and went, 700 by whatever. So yeah, I'd say right now it's only size, because I'm willing to do all the other things. Like I'm willing to do 1/1 stitching if I like the design. I'm willing to do fractionals because I work on even weaves. I'm willing to work on you know, again, if I'm drawn to the pattern, I'm drawn to the pattern. Doesn't mean I don't need to color correct it or change some elements about it, or, you know, whatever. If I like the design, I like the design. So, and then she wanted to know what my favorite designers are, and she took her guess, and she thought my favorite designers would be Jeanette Douglas, Just Nan, and My Big Toe. And that actually gave me pause, because I had to think about it, going, what are my favorites? And so I probably have like a top 20, 25 designers. But I went, top 3. So I decided the way that I would pick my top 3 was just by the sheer number of charts that I have by them. And so the surprising answer is, and this is not necessarily in the order, but based on the number of charts that I have in my stash, my top 3 are Jeanette Douglas, Mirabilia / Nora Corbett. I consider that technically one designer. and Stony Creek are my top 3 based on the number of charts in my stash. So those were good questions. It really made me think. So if you ever want to do like a random Q&A thingy, throw the questions down there. We'll see what comes up. So those were great. Thanks, Denise. That was interesting because you certainly made me think about a few things. All right, the other remaining ones we're going to talk about when we get to their relative pieces. I will also say I'm hoping that this will be a slightly shorter video than the last 2 because the last 2 have been like movie length. So I'm hoping that this one will be a shorter one. All right, what have I stitched on this week? Well, as always, sampler stitches by the Drawn Thread, my stitch along hosted by Sarah Hughes, the Stitchin' Mommy. It's been an interesting week. So I'll show you where I got to. There's been some stitching and some unstitching and some restitching, and I think there's going to be more unstitching tonight. So where did I get to? So this is where we're currently at. So what have I really done this week? I have to come up. Okay. So I did fill in this festoon stitching. I did end up using the Soie Perlee for this. Now, I have my chart here just so I can make sure that I'm not lying when I say things. Because I think, yes. So the festoon stitch is originally called for to be stitched using the Soie 103. Which I used for the diagonal chevron up here, which you are probably looking at going, the answer is yeah, it's been frogged. I took it out. So I like doing this with the Soie Perlee. I tried using the Soie Perlee to do the diagonal chevron to see if it was better than the Soie 103, and it was technically better than the Soie 103, and I didn't really like it. But somebody left me a comment this week. So again, Quill Pen left me a comment saying she didn't like her diagonal chevron either, and she was looking at an older Inspirations magazine, and it showed a diagonal 4-sided stitch. And so that's what she's putting in there. So I've looked it up, and I'm having a really good, yeah, she's giving me something to think about. So again, this is an example where I've pulled it out. I may be changing the stitch. I may be totally copying Quill Pen and putting in a diagonal 4-sided stitch in that area. Check back next week and see what I do. I made a decision about my very light pink. I didn't get it completely finished here in the F, just because I was running out of time. But I have made my decision. It's going to play into the letter G, which goes over here. So that decision has been made. Quill Pen also said that she was adding a border into her design. Are you posting on Instagram? Do I know your Instagram name? Can you please let me know in the comment section down below, because I would love to see where you are. I did go on Instagram and looked under the hashtag, because I didn't post again this week because, you know, I'm terrible at the Instagram. Must work on this. Under the hashtag SOS 2022 SAL. So Quill Pen, let me know if you're on Instagram or if you're in a Facebook group that I think I can get to. That would be lovely, because I'd love to see what you're doing, because it sounded very interesting. She said she's also using DMC Metallic and adding it in. She's trying to add it in somewhere in every letter. So again, would love to see it. I also, while I was on searching on the hashtag on Instagram, somebody else posted that they were very unhappy with their Eastern stitch, which is over here. And they went on to the internet and found a completely different diagram for it and liked her results much, much better. So I thought that was interesting, and hers and her picture looked really good. So I went on to internet and I looked up another one. And so I unstitched. So there's a difference between frogging, which is when I rip it out and all of those threads go into the container. This I unstitched and tried it using the different diagram. And I do think that the other diagram gives a better one. So if you have not hit E in the Eastern stitch yet, my recommendation is to not follow the stitch diagram in the chart. And it's really for her step, sort of when you're looping over the top, when you're looping over the top part of the stitch, it actually says to go under and then come over and then come down to where the number 7 is in the diagram. The stitch diagram on the web, which I have tried myself here in my replacement version, is instead of going under and then over, is go over and then under. So reverse that. So do the looping over part at the top the same way you did on the bottom version. I know if you don't have the chart and you don't know what I'm talking about, none of that's going to make any sense. Even if you do have the chart and you're looking going, none of that may make sense. I will put a link to the stitch diagram that I was looking at. So there will be a link to, I think it's Sarah's Embroidery is the one that I was using. And I like how it comes out better, but again, you're going to laugh. Here we go again. So I unpicked it. I actually did a test stitch over here on the side and liked it better. But when I came in to do it, I still don't love it. But now I have these pictures that I took of those frame samples from the Craft Connection, and those lovely ladies have their Eastern stitches look lovely. They look lovely. So I've decided the problem, so now I've got a corrected stitch diagram that I think is going to work out much better for me. I've decided it's the Soie Perlee. So tonight's task, as part of my working on this, is to unstitch this again and stitch the Eastern stitch using one strand of Soie d'Alger white that I used over here for these cushion stitches. So I'm behind. So technically, according to the schedule to keep me on track, this is the night that I should finish all of the letter G. So there's actually quite a bit left to go on G because I did not finish this one. There's one stitch under here, then I've got the grapes and the big block. So I'm a little behind, but that's totally fine because I haven't finished this chart yet. So I need to finish my D and decide what I'm doing, whether it's some version of the diagonal chevron or a diagonal four-sided stitch. I need to finish E because I need to redo the Eastern stitch. And F is I need to put, there's like 5 or 7 stitches of this pink left to go. So this will get done tonight. This will get done tonight. I may have to debate this for one more week. And then work on the G. So I'm not horrendously far behind, but I'm a little further behind than, it's not bad. But again, for all very good reasons. It's the same thing with the decision about to restart the entire project using a different fabric. I'm glad I restarted it because I think if I had continued going on using the Pearl Gray Lugana, I would not have been happy with the end result. This is a much better choice for me, so happy with that. So better to make the right decisions as you're going along than to get to the end and go, ugh. I can't think of a worse feeling of getting to the end of the project going, well, I spent all that time and it's like, it's okay. That sounds like a not happy ending as much as a process stitcher as I am. I don't think that's a good outcome either. So I'm glad that I've restarted it. I'm glad that I'm making the changes that I'm making as I'm going along. I think it's Quill Pen also made a comment that, so she's changing some of the colors as well as adding in the border, adding in a metallic thread in each of the letters. She's also changing out some of the colors. And the funny thing is, when I was looking at one of the frame samples at the Craft Connection, this particular stitch, so one of the people who had, I would say, had a similar palette had done this using the gold color. And I remember looking at it in the store going, that is supposed to be green. And then saying to myself, and why is that? Because the chart said so? Because it's not like I follow the colors on the chart, so who am I to be looking at somebody else's stitching going, that was supposed to be a totally different color. You know, again, and somebody else did their festoon stitch using a different color, and that made me think, I still ended up doing it with the Soie Perlee. Okay, so the called for was not the Soie Perlee, but the color was the same, and I'm okay with how that came out at the end. There's technically one stitch in there that's off by one thread, but I am not going back and fixing it. That one, no one will ever see. Anyway, so there's where I'm at. A lot left to go. There's a part of me that says maybe I'll just try to work more on G. Well, I want to fix this Eastern stitch. Check back next week and see what I end up doing. See how well I make out on my glorious sampler of stitches. All right. So progress on that, which is good. Progress is better than no progress. All right, let's get into my Lent stitching. The infamous Jerusalem by Thea Gouverneur. So that's what it's going to look like. Yes, this is my gigantic piece. Now, because I don't have to show you all of it, I have rolled it up so we're back, the sidebars are back on, so we don't have quite as much goofiness going on as we did last week. So, what have I worked on? I've worked on the green. So if you can't, and I'm not good about inserting the before and after pictures, because there's my page break. So last week there was, I don't know, about 130 stitches over on that, on the right side in that new page. And as of last night, there was about just over 1,200 stitches. So I've got in a little over 1,000 stitches in this week into this. So it's filling out nicely. Because of course the next church up is the Church of Mary Magdalene. So I got the name right last week. Again, it's always lovely when I go back and check for my facts after I filmed the video. The Church of Mary Magdalene. And my plan is still the same. So this green is coming along fantastically. It's getting very close to being all filled in. I'm also going to fill in the little brown that's left over here. And the green... so all of this green up here. So I want to get all of this green filled in, because then I'm going to start working on the top of the church, which is done in our infamous metallics. Because I want to start at the top and work my way down. So I don't have final decisions on what my metallics are. This is the week we get to do it. So Anna had commented whether or not I was going to consider diamond thread from DMC, and I am going to consider it. She also asked if I would be willing to share my conversion, and the answer is absolutely. Once I have a decision, I'm more than happy to throw that in, so check back next week, because I think by the time we get to next week's video, we will be working on, you know, there will be metallic in my future this week. Very exciting. But I did find a really great conversion chart on the Fabi Riley site, and I will put a link to that conversion chart where it says here, the first column is the DMC Metallics, and then there's a column for DMC Diamant, then Rainbow Gallery Petite Treasure braid, and then Krynic number 4 braid. So there are some instances where they go, there is no equivalent, where it's just straight up blank. There are some instances where they said, here's a possibility. It's not necessarily a great conversion, but it's an option, which is in sort of a gray color on the chart. And then the other ones that they think are equivalent are in black. So I have pulled some of those conversions. I didn't have all of the options in my stash. No big surprise. And I'm gonna have to go to like multiple stores to actually be able to see all the conversions. So it's a little more running around than I had time for last week, so that's part of this week's chore. But I thought the chart was really great. So I will put a link to that specific chart on the Fabi Riley website if you're interested in seeing it. I certainly have downloaded it because I thought it was a great resource into my stitching drive on my computer, so that I always have it, because you just never know how long things are going to be there. So I expect by next week I will have my decisions made. I will say that one of the options that I did have in my stash, you know, so I pulled it out of my stash, I came down, I compared it to the thread that was in the kit, and I go, it's color-wise, yes, it's similar. It's not nearly as shiny, which I think is not the effect that I'm going for. So I didn't have the Petite Treasure braid conversion for it, or the diamond conversion for it to compare. You know, if the option is use the dreaded horrendous DMC Metallic or use the Krynic option that they've got in that chart, I'm probably going to use the dreaded DMC Metallic. And yeah, here I go, the pain that we put ourselves through to have a pretty result. Yep. Anyway, there are some other options on there. We'll see how they work out. Check back next week. But I really liked the table. I would say out of the options that I saw on the web, it was probably the best one that I had. And again, the ones that I had where I go like, yeah, I think they do convert. One I think converts pretty well. One of them, like I say, the color is I would say technically the color is correct, but it's just not shiny, and that's not what I'm going for. So I don't know where we're going to end up on that one, but either way, like I say, I thought getting over 1,000 stitches into this week was pretty good. This is April the 3rd, so there are 2 more weeks of stitching on this. So I need to do today's stitching as well. My 1 length of floss, because it's Sunday and it only gets 1 length of floss on a Sunday. I know exactly, there's filling in going in down here, that's the color that's going to happen for today. But I feel like I'm making good progress. This I don't think is a 6-day project, but again, how this works into the schedule is now going to be different, because like I say, I've already made the decision. It's been worked on for 2 Lent seasons as a Lent project. Certainly for Lent next year, this is not going to be my project, so I'm hoping to get this into the rotation a little more, because then I'll just make more progress. So when is the timeline for getting this, egregiously huge project done? I don't know, but I'm making progress. And again, this is, again, this is the perfect example saying I've had this in my stash for years and years and years, and I'm thrilled that I'm finally working on it. It's making progress. I don't know when it's going to be finished, but it's making progress, which was more than what was happening before. All right. So what else did I work on? So again, the funny thing after I had the big soliloquy that I was kind of like I was needing to add a few more, needing to add in some other things because I was getting a little tired of Jerusalem. I think the funny thing was the last week, the stitching on Jerusalem was hard stitching, right? It was metallics, it was back stitching. Saturday, so Friday was like finishing off the cross stitching in metallics, followed by a Saturday of back stitching with metallics. I think that's where I was like, I'm over this. I need to bring something else out. The funny thing is when I sat down on Monday to do it, I had no problems. Anyway, but I'd already decided, I'd already put things into my plan for this last week, for what I was going to add in, because I was getting tired of Jerusalem. So I thought that was pretty funny, because on Monday I was like, I don't know that I needed them, but I put them into the plan. So I stitched on them, but I like where I got to. So I hauled out my, this is Deb's Winter Biscornu from the Winter 2021 Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine, by, I want to say Julia Punti Antiki. Anyway, it's in the magazine. I have downloaded my electronic copy of the Spring 2022 magazine, and it's interesting. She has a really lovely spring. It's called Deb's Spring Biscornu. It's lovely as well. And I said to myself, you really need to get your first one done before you even think about doing a second one. And the interesting thing is, you know, because I made a lot of progress on this last week. If I really just sat down and I only worked on this would get stitched up so fast. Anyway, but I only worked on it for a little bit. But I'm happy to report that side one is complete. So I put in the light blue here, did this last dark blue snowflake, and got all the Smyrnas in all of the things. So side one is officially complete. Side two has officially not been started, but that is in the plan. I am hoping after we get through Lent that I can actually just sit down and knock out side two. Because now that I've finished side one, side two is essentially the exact same design with the colors reversed. I am doing this on a 32 count opalescent white linen. Which reminds me, I forgot a question from Anna. We'll get back to you at the end. This is the 32 count opalescent linen using the DMC conversions from the original chart. I only had, so technically her example in the chart, she used dinky dyes. I only had one of the dinky dyes in my stash. And actually when I hauled out these two and I compare them, I think I actually like these DMC colors better than the called for dinky dyes. Anyway, it's blue, it's me anyway. So I love how this is coming. I can't wait to get part two finished, because then we all know that comes down, we're then at the crux. I would need to turn it into a fully finished object. But again, part of this is, was specifically in my plan for 2022, because I am trying to make sure I get a fully finished object out of this. Technically, I think I was hoping to have it done before now, but that didn't happen, and that's fine. I've made progress. Side one done. Hopefully, side two will be finished before we hit the end of April. Fully finished, that's a different kettle of fish, and we'll talk about that later. But side one is complete. And again, because I had already decided by the time that I got to Sunday that, you know, I was tired of Jerusalem and I needed to add things, you know, bring out some of my other projects. March, from the Sunshine Stitchers, Carolyn Zook and the 614 Stitcher. They have these designer focus months, and March was Rosewood Manor. And I, of course, have a Rosewood Manor in my stash that is already an existing whip that didn't get as much work on it last year as we thought there was going to be. It, of course, is Christmas Quilts. So that's what that looks like. You'll laugh when you see what I decided to do with this, because I certainly laughed a little bit when I started it. The funniest thing is when I hauled it out, I couldn't remember what scroll rods it fit on. I spent more time trying to find the scroll rods that I put it on, to the point where I actually had to go back and look at one of the videos from December going, it was on scroll rods, wasn't it? Anyway, crazy. But I am happy with where I ended up. Although there's some fuzz on there. I've just realized I am missing. It's a big piece. So just give me a second. I need to rescue some of my clips. All right, so what did I do? Two things. One, I actually pulled this into Markup RXP. Now, it makes it, and I think for people who use these apps, they would kind of go, why would you bother pulling it in? Because it doesn't do well when it's a, there's a lot of specialty stitches in this. And I acknowledge that for me, it was actually just one try. One, it was trying to pull it into Markup RXP and how that worked versus how it looked pulling it into Pattern Keeper. And again, so that was an interesting spirit. So it's sitting in Markup RXP. It is certainly not in Pattern Keeper, that's for sure. But so what did I end up doing? Well, because I'm ridiculous. After everything that I did in the previous week, what did I decide to do with my time that I was spending on it? I decided I was going to work with Petite Treasure Braid because I hadn't had enough metallics last week. The other funny thing is when I started working with it, the first length of Petite Treasure Braid that I put in was like, I had a big fight with it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how is this happening? I was like going, this is a little bit worrisome. So I think I put the first length in, fought with it, and went, oh my goodness, put it away. Finished my snowflake. The next day when I hauled it out, I went, we're still going to do the Petite Treasure Braid. And from then on, no issues with it whatsoever. No fight. Can't tell you what's going on. Anyway, so I finished, I put in all of the gold metallic that goes in the centers of all of these in Christmas. So I put all of those in, and there are gold centers for a grandiose 4 stitches. This one was already done, but I put it into these remaining 2. And so that's what I got in there. More Petite Treasure Braid, because there's nothing like adding a metallic after you've had a bad metallic week. And I'm facing metallic this week. Yes, I do it to myself. I totally do it to myself. I set myself up for the pain, the agony. What is that slogan from like one of those sports programs? Anyway, that all for my cross stitching. But again, it's in there. I love how it looks. It looks really great. I'm very happy with it. And again, every stitch that goes in is a stitch more than there was before. Again, there's no specific, man, the fluff on this thing. Clearly I was wearing a navy blue sweater when I worked on it. You know, it was interesting because when I got there, I was like, you know, what am I going to pull out? There are a number of projects where I was like going, oh, you should pull out this. And I went, you know what? No, this is an opportunity, because there were only 4 days left in the month where I could play with my other piece. And I went, you know what? This gives me an opportunity to participate in the Garon Designer Focus, you know, stitch along-ish thing that they've got going on. So yeah, this is my contribution. I worked on it for a little bit, got those metallics in, and you know, again, every stitch that goes in is one stitch more than there was before. I technically was hoping that I was going to get to work on some of the metallic, because there's metallic gold metallic ribbons at the top of these, at the top of the ornaments that go up here, but I didn't get there, and that was okay too. So progress on that. This is, of course, going away again. It's not coming out for a bit. It should come out a little later this year, but it's going away for, you know, several more months. So that was Christmas. Actually, let's do, because we're going to see if we can't make this. My screen grab, because it's Christmas in March. So that was worked in March. Of course, when we hit Friday, April 1st, I started my new cottage of the month. So this is the April Cottage by Country Cottage Needleworks. That's what it's supposed to look like when it's done. I am doing this on, as I'm doing all of my cottages, on a 32 count Icelandic Blue linen from Whitchelt. Here's my little start. So I got the main part of the house. There's more house that goes over here. But it was a very interesting start to this. Very interesting start to this. And I'll show you why. So the purple that I have, the called for color for the purple of the house is Classic Colorworks Amethyst. And if you recall with perfect clarity, which I don't think you will, when I showed you my stash acquisitions from the Craft Connection, I showed you that I had picked up a skein of Amethyst Classic Colorworks while I was there, because they had it. Sorry, I'm just getting all my props ready to go. So here's the skein of Classic Colorworks that I bought at the Craft Connection while I was up there. Here is the skein of Amethyst by Classic Colorworks that I had in my stash. And yes, you can tell by the color of the tag, new Classic Colorworks, old Classic Colorworks. Look at the difference. So again, so when I was pulling it together, getting ready to start, I kind of put them, now remember I said I picked them up because I went, I think this is different than the one that I have in my stash. The pattern calls for a lighter purple and a darker purple, which is why while I was at the Craft Connection and I was looking at things, I picked up their Amethyst and I picked up Blooming Crocus because I went, okay, that's a light and a dark, and we all know I decided to change things. But the funny thing is, look at how close Blooming Crocus is to my old Amethyst. Anyway, it was interesting. But I decided when I was looking at this that this was too light. So on this fabric, you know, the house would be okay, but I felt, you know, by the time you strand this down to 2 strands, I went, this is going to be too light. So I decided this was not, even though I picked it up, this is not going to be the Amethyst I'm going to use. And then I decided, so Country Cottage Needleworks does put DMC conversions in there. So their DMC conversion was 209. So technically, I think either one of these would have worked. This is Blooming Crocus. This is the amethyst I had, but I decided I would go with the amethyst that I had. So I have used the called for Classic Colorworks amethyst, but I will say it is old amethyst. It was the amethyst that I had in my stash because, as I said, the amethyst I picked up, just see amethyst, is different. Same way, this is amethyst. Anyway, very different. So now I'm tempted because I know that I have to run out and do a little bit of shopping to get my conversions on my metallics for Jerusalem. I will be very interested. Don't be surprised next week if you see that I've picked up another skein of amethyst, because I want to see how it compares to these two. Yeah. Anyway, so the next interesting thing is the darker purple that they've got is a called for DMC solid. Actually, I'm just going, I think I pulled the wrong one. That could be part of the problem. Nope, I didn't. Is DMC 553. But the funny thing is, I'm not sure that I think that that's enough contrast. So I have to go back to the store and have a look at some purple options. I had a quick scan through the purples that I had, and I was not happy with any of them. So I also need to spend time at my LNS and go in there and have a look at their options. Now, one of the things that I'm going to consider is using an Anchor solid instead of a DMC solid, because we all know that Anchor has more purple options than DMC does. So an Anchor solid is one of the options, as well as potentially one of the hand-dyed fibers. I pulled it out and I went, I don't know about that. So check back next week on that one. The other funny thing, and we all knew this was coming, technically my plan was to start on the roof, and that didn't happen. Why? Because I'm not happy with the browns that they've got. We all know I struggle with the browns in this series. So I do have the called for DMC solids. So those are the browns, the called for. I don't know about those. I'm debating. Oh, I don't think I have them. Oh yeah, it's because I've got them in a separate baggie. So I'm debating the browns in the 840 range, and I'm debating the browns in the 38, like 62, 64 range. So again, had the threads out, had to haul out my DMC color card, couldn't make a decision. Hopefully by the time you see this next week, I will have made a decision on what browns I'm using, and hopefully you'll see some progress on the roof. So for April, I'm technically using the called for Classic Colorworks Amethyst, although it's old, not new. I'm debating my browns. I'm changing the yellow from 745 to 744. So the same change in yellow that I did for March. No, 744 I think becomes 745. I always get that wrong. I'm also changing, they did their called for pink in this chart is 604, which I'm changing to 605. That's the same pink that I used in March. It's just slightly less intense, which works for me better. I need to make my final decision on, they call for Gentle Arts chives, which again, when I was at the Craft Connection, they actually had a skein of chives. I didn't like it. So I have pulled the DMC equivalent, which I think is probably where we're going to end up, but check back next week. But yes, a lot of debating going on the colors on this one, which slowed my progress, I have to say. Like I say, when I hauled out the amethyst from my stash and this one, I went, wow, not the same, which then of course I had to pull the DMC. Anyway, it turned into a whole thing. So I've done a little bit of stitching. Like I say, I would have hoped to have had a little more of the house done on this. I was really hoping to have the last bit over here done, but I didn't, and that's okay too. It's fine. But April has started. So that will be my combination this week, focusing on Jerusalem as my Lent stitching with trying to make progress on my April Cottage of the Month. So that is my stitching for this week. I have, wait for it, no stashquisitions for this week. So that part's really short. And then, like I say, I just realized I had forgotten Anna left me a question about what's the difference between Jobelin and evenweave from the episode before, where I was comparing how linens and evenweaves dye differently. So here's a quick-ish answer. So Jobelin is an even weave. Just a cautionary note, because there are some people who I've seen in some commentary where they view linen as even weave because they go even weave as long as you have the same number of fibers vertically as you do horizontally, also known as the warp and the weft, but I never remember which way they go. I call them vertical threads and horizontal threads because I can't remember the technical terms. As long as you have the same number vertically and horizontally, some people view that as an even weave. I don't like to view it as an even weave because even though the number of threads per inch are even, the size of the threads are different. So just caution, because you may be talking to someone where they view linen as an even weave. I will also comment that there certainly are linens that are uneven, because you can buy linens that are like, I'm making them up because I don't have any of them and I don't want them in my stash because that would just kill me. Like there's 53, 63 linen. So it's actually called that, where it's got like one number / another number, because that specifically means that you have a different number of threads running vertically versus horizontally. Anyway, that would just throw me right off. Some people, anyway, it's called for certain reproduction patterns and whatever, but anyway, I don't do that. I like to view even weaves as Lugana or Jobelin because, yes, they have the same number of fibers running vertically as they do horizontally, but the fibers themselves are uniform in size. So unlike linen, where you get thin ones and thick ones and slubs and all that kind of stuff, both Lugana and Jobelin have uniform fibers. So I consider both of them even weaves. So I certainly, I think if you go onto the Traditional Stitches website, like if you clicked, I think they've, under fabrics, they've got an even weave, but I think when you go into even weave, you'll see that Jobelin and Lugana are different categories, so you can decide which. The difference between them is the fiber content, and I forgot to look it up. Let's see if I can't. And it's like a difference of 1%. So both of them are a combination of cotton and rayon. Let's see how fast I know I forgot the piece of paper. I had it written out. It's upstairs sitting on my desk. So Jobelin is 51% cotton, 49% rayon. Lugana is 52% cotton and 48% viscous. So again, so they're both a combination of cotton and a polyester material. Okay, viscous rayon, anyway, you know what I mean. And again, part of that also factors into why those two fabrics take the dye so differently. But in terms of when you're looking at them, they both have uniform fibers, so I like both of them. I like Jobelin a little better. It's a little softer, but your color options in terms of solids are much, much more limited. They do have a number of hand-dyed Jobelins available from Whitchult, but like I say, when I got my piece of Summer Sky, in the current supply chain issues, there are more supply chain issues with the hand-dyed Jobelins as well. So the availability of it is not it's not as readily available as the Lugana. So I don't know how much, what the supply chain factors into that. Lugana from Zweigart has more color options. Jobelin comes like, well, this said that Jobelin came in a 25 count. I haven't seen a 25 count Jobelin, and I haven't looked on the Whitchult site. But certainly your color, there's a lot of color options if you're looking for a 25 count Lugana. There are reasonable color options for 28 count Lugana. Decent color options for 32 count Lugana, which is my favorite. You know, there's 20 count Lugana. So those are options. So for me, you know, do I prefer Jobelin to Lugana? Technically, not really, because again, color trumps everything else. I will, if you sort of say like, the perfect color is a Lugana, I'll go great Lugana. The perfect color is a Jobelin, great Jobelin. If it's a toss-up between a Jobelin and a linen, and you go, the colors are very similar, Jobelin. If you go, here's a linen and a Lugana, and the colors are similar, Lugana. So I will always choose an even weave over a linen to the extent that the color is the right option. But I have a toss-up between Jobelin and Lugana. I have both of them in stash. I have lots of both of them anyway. I find Jobelin a little softer to handle. I have a friend who doesn't really like Jobelin because she feels that it's slippery when she's stitching. And again, so it really turns into personal preference. You know, so if you come across a piece, try it, see if you like it. You may like it, you may not. Again, it's you don't know until you've tried it. But I certainly have both in my stash. I use both. Like I say, I picked up that piece of black Jobelin because that's being used for that New York Dreamer chart. You know, again, you can get black Lugana, but I just went, there was a piece of Jobelin and it was on sale, so why not get it? All right, now I really have to look at my notes because I'm really afraid that I forgot something. We did Tanya, we did the markup RXP. Okay, now I think I've covered them all. Whew, almost forgot that one. All right, and with that, as always, thinking about the people of the Ukraine. My interesting story for this week is my cousin's husband is a doctor. He's actually gone over to Poland to help work with the refugees. It was interesting hearing his perspective, sort of saying, you know, what the medical issues are, you know, what he was sort of bracing himself as he was getting ready to go over. You know, again, people that have been traveling on foot for extended period of times, who have been off their medication for potentially an extended period of time, and the complications, you know, when you haven't been able to take your medication on time and regularly, and how that exacerbates some of the medical conditions. And so he was sort of bracing himself for what he would be facing. I just want to say, when you keep hearing me saying my cousin, my cousin, my cousin, you keep going, I have a ridiculous number of first and second cousins. So it's a ridiculous number. So if you get them going like, really, another cousin? The answer is yeah, really another one. There's a lot of them. Anyway, it will be very he's going over for 2 weeks. I don't remember off the top of my head who exactly he's going with, but I was grateful he was going. You know, help for the refugees. It did make me feel really badly because I caught the post from the Princess Stitcher, who kind of went, you know, they're having where she is, right, they are in a ringed city. They're blocked off. There is no humanitarian corridor for humanitarian aid to come in. So the pharmacies are out of drugs. The food, they're running out of food. You know, she was commenting. Stitchy Black Princess? Stitchy, anyway, we all know the one I'm talking about. You know, where she was, you know, commenting, going like, we're now at that point where it's like, we will be running out of food supplies. We will be out of meat. There won't be new meat coming in. There won't be, and again, yeah, if there's no humanitarian corridor, that's, I wish I knew how to fix this. I clearly don't have the power or the capability to fix it. Thoughts and prayers, and I wish we would have found a resolution to this. I, like many others, am struggling, going like, how are we still in this? And unfortunately, I think we're in this, there's a lot more left to go before we have some kind of resolution for this. And again, the destruction to the Ukraine is just going to be devastating. So anyway, encourage you to do all the things that you can to help support both the refugees and the people in the Ukraine. You know, so whether it's, you know, it's killing me that I can't remember her name. Stitchy Princess, Black Princess Stitchy, you know, anyway, look her up on Instagram. She's got an Etsy store, you know, and she's quite frankly said, thank you so much for everyone who is buying the charts, because right now, that is their only source of income. That's the only reason why they have money to go out and buy whatever food is available and try to get the medication that they need. If, you know, yeah, I think she commented that she was having to drive, she had to drive to the other end of town because there was a pharmacy that they thought had some of the medication that they were looking for. So challenges all the way around for the people of the Ukraine. So thoughts and prayers are going out for them. I truly wish that we can resolve this quickly, but I'm braced for this being, unfortunately, more of a prolonged event. So thinking about them, encouraging you to support them to the extent that you are able. And again, when my cousin's husband returns, it will be very interesting to hear what it's been like for him, what he's seen, his stories. I'm sure there will be heartbreaking and devastating, but I hope that there will be some good stories in there that are hopeful and positive. So with that, thinking about the people of the Ukraine, for those of us that are living our lives in a not war-torn part of the world, very grateful for where I live, very grateful for how blessed my life is, and not taking that for granted these days. I can certainly say I have not had to experience bombing. Anyway, so for those of us, let's take a moment to be grateful for what we've got. So I hope everybody's staying safe. Safety first, safety first, safety first. Staying safe. I hope we're all staying healthy. And I hope that you find some time to work on your stitching, and that I hope that it finds you some joy this week. As always, happy to have comments, questions, topics suggested in the comments. I love the conversation, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.